Hey folks, and welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a bit since I put out some content, but that's because I've just been super busy with work lately, and I actually did record a couple of videos that I was going to post on the channel, but unfortunately, in one case, I had some audio issues because I tried testing out some new lapel-style microphones, and unfortunately, the audio of that video was just so incredibly bad that I could not find a way to fix it to where it would actually be acceptable content. I'm just gonna leave it at that. It was a nightmare. It was experiment failed. It was worth a shot, but it didn't work out. So that video kind of just went into the ether. And then the other video I put out, just the timing wasn't right anymore to put it out. To be honest with you, I feel like this content that I'm putting out now made a little bit more sense. But it'll be included in a highlight video later on this year. And I do kind of my end of 2024 highlights sort of thing. But anyway, in this video, we're going to be taking a look at one of the big local tournaments that happens in Mobile, Alabama each year. You know, for example, we have the City of Mobile Championships, which is probably the biggest tournament we have in the area every year. Then we have the Halloween Howler, which is another really big tournament for the Mobile area. It has been kind of temporarily called the Halloween Growler and relocated to a new course, but we're actually going to be getting it back on its normal course. And then the Southside Smackdown is kind of the other really big tournament in the Mobile area. And so this is what this video is. I'm now playing MA2 this year. And of course, I got my first MA2 win back in January. And I've just been kind of trying to chip away at getting consistent, kind of at that MA2 level, try to finally get that rating above 900. You know, maybe try to push to that 910, 915 range eventually. And anyway, you know, that is what I was looking to do at this tournament, was just try to come in and have a good finish and try to play above my rating. That was my goal. There were 18 players in my field and about 55-ish players in kind of the amateur divisions overall. So MA1, MA2, MA3, all playing kind of the same layout. And so really my goal was to place kind of within the top 5 of my division. And if you included all 3 divisions, you know, bring MA1, bring MA3 into it. Obviously, I wanted to be able to beat all the scores in MA3 because I feel like I should be doing that if I'm playing MA2. And then I kind of wanted to see if I could have a score that would have been competitive in MA1. You know, why not? Just an added goal or something like that. But came in with very little preparation just due to how much I had been working. I was putting in some practice putting in the backyard when I got home from work, but I wasn't really able to go out and really play many practice rounds. Only played the one practice round at USA, which you're seeing kind of here in the background footage. And then I did play a few rounds at Muni at a smaller tournament just prior to this one. So didn't have too much preparation. So with that said, I came in with kind of middle-of-the-road expectations. Again, I really was hoping to finish in the top 5. I knew that there were some players in my division who had some wins in MA2 already this year. One guy even had like a win in MA1. And so I knew that I was up against some pretty good competition that was rated well above me and were playing some really good golf this year. And so I was really just kind of hoping to keep up with them. And to me, that would be like a top 5 finish out of the 18 to 20-ish players that were in MA2 for this tournament. And then, like I said, just kind of keep pushing my rating. And without further ado, we will hop into the rounds and talk through how things went. So for this tournament, we played 1 round at Langan Municipal Park and 1 round at USA. And I started on hole 12 at Langan, which in the short pin position is not really a basket I can reach. It takes kind of 370-ish feet of power on kind of a hyzer line to get to the basket, which I just don't have. Like my max right now is probably 340-ish, but on a straight line. So was really just looking to par this hole to open up the tournament. And threw a decent drive, threw a pretty good upshot, and was able to cash a slight tester of a putt. Not, you know, you always want to have like a nice short putt to kick off your tournament, but that was a slight tester. Then the forehand, I've kind of talked about it in some earlier videos this year. It's just kind of all over the place right now. I need to really just put some work into practicing my forehand. I threw that on the right line I wanted, but just fluffed it nose up way into the sky, and so came up way short, which left me a really long birdie putt, which I nearly connected on. I was just a touch short on that, so wound up just kind of being a tap-in par instead. So that's even through 2 holes. So we get the hole 14. And just the perfect shot shape for this hole. Slight turning shot that fades out at the end. Got me way down there. I actually came up a little bit shorter than I thought. I thought I was going to be kind of parked, but I wound up being like maybe 25, 30 feet, you know, near the circle's edge. So still had a putt I had to work for to get birdie.
Get in there. Yes, sir.
But a beautiful putt. So that's going to put me at 1 down the first 3 holes. going in the hole 15. This was in the deep pin position for this tournament. You can kind of see it there way in the background. And in the deep pin position, it's like a little over 400 feet to get to the basket. And even though it does play downhill, it's still just not really a basket I can get to. So I just played a nice dead straight shot at the basket to give myself, you know, a routine approach for par. Was really my only goal. And I got it done. And so keeping things 1 under through 4. We get into another hole I feel like I can usually attack when my forehand's on point. And again, I threw the right line, but just not enough power, and I also flexed it too much. Didn't get it to fade back towards the pin. So my accuracy is getting a little bit better with the forehand lately. Like I'm starting to hit my lines a little bit better, but I'm still just not quite getting the timing right for the power and for, you know, the angle integrity, I guess you could say. As we get the hole 17, I should have threw a forehand on this hole too, just to play it safe, but I wanted to go big with the backhand. I was feeling headwind off the tee, but unfortunately, I just threw this disc nose up and just fizzled out. So now I'm out of bounds, throwing 3, with still a little over 300 feet to cover to get to the basket. And this is actually a really good forehand. If I would have thrown this forehand on the last tee shot on hole 16, I may have had myself a birdie putt. But like I said, it's just a little inconsistent right now. And so this is my par safe putt, but in reality, there's really no running this with kind of that big tree branch kind of blocking the putt, and then it's also OB deep at the basket. So just took that one, took my medicine. This is hard to film. It's just a tight tunnel shot off the tee. You can kind of see my disc kick there, though, off the fence into a good fairway position. Ideally, I'd like to be more left than this, just because it makes the forehand approach shot a little bit easier to do. Here, I have to kind of take it a little bit wider to get around some of these tree branches in front of me. But I threw it on the perfect line with the perfect hyzer angle. That's kind of a new disc in the bag. That's an A2. I haven't thrown an A2 in a really long time. I used to just throw the Justice, but I found the Justice to be a little too overstable, more of a utility disc. But the A2 still has some really good overstability, but a little bit more push. And so I actually parred hole 18, which feels like a birdie, honestly, because that hole is so difficult. Tee shot's tight and scary. Small island to approach to. Yeah, and this is like a constant mistake I've been having on hole 1 lately at Muni, is just throwing my disc on too much hyzer and dragging away left. So I'm getting the distance I need to get to this basket, but I need to be throwing it more dead straight, and I just am not. So that's disappointing. That's a hole I feel like I should be birdieing a high amount of time, and I haven't birdied it lately at all. So I think I'm at even par right now because of the bogey I took on 17. Kind of wiped out the birdie I took on the train hole. But this hole, I threw a great tee shot, as you saw, and I'm able to get myself back under par. Here's Tracy's nature appreciation moment for you folks. You know that she likes to throw these in the video every now and then, so a couple ducks there. So 1 under right now in the round. And again, with this forehand, I'm just trying to keep it in bounds. And I tested the water line a little bit more than I wanted to, but you can see it rolled right there on the side of the hill here. So, yeah, it was a few feet away from being OB, so not ideal, but not too shabby. Again, this is a hole in the past when I had confidence in my forehand and I was throwing it on the right angles. I could actually get myself to the circle sometimes for a birdie putt, but I've lost a decent bit of distance with my forehand right now with how I'm throwing it. So, totally fine with just being safe and getting a par there. Now, this one I meant to put it more over the bushes. That way I could avoid the center tree and also have a birdie putt. But unfortunately, I threw it a little too center. And so I wound up having like a really long birdie putt. And it was hard to commit to it with the water right behind the basket. And once again, it's like I was aiming at the right spot, but just fluffed it nose up. And so did not get the flex forehand I was looking for to get down to this basket. So basically took myself out of birdie contention on this hole. And that is going to be me just laying out for par. But at least I'm not taking any damage. I'm still 1 under par at this point as we get into hole number 5. Decided to go with my Esplin Emperor on a shot, but I have found that I have beat in this Esplin Emperor too much. It is not, doesn't have the same overstability it used to have. I used to be able to do that disc kind of flat, and it would just like hyzer pretty hard, and now it's just kind of turning a little bit and flying really straight. But I didn't really recognize that until it was too late, because like I said, I haven't really been playing a whole lot of golf lately, so I wasn't aware of how beat in that Emperor. I need to probably do some field work here soon to just kind of get a better feel for my bag and how my discs are flying. Threw this tee shot perfectly, right up the gut, right towards center pin position. So I threw it about 325, 330 feet or so. Then threw what I thought was going to be a decent approach shot with the backhand. But unfortunately left myself a little bit further away than I wanted to, and I wanted just being a little bit short with the putt. So I'm just kind of playing par golf right now, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. At least I'm not making any big mistakes or taking bogeys, but not scoring is kind of a problem. Then this hole, I just put the disc more outside than I wanted to. I knew it had the overstability to fade back, but I was a little disappointed with just not really putting it on the right line. But at the end of the day, I still had a birdie putt, so... And I was able to cash it. So now I'm 2 under par going in the hole 8. Just want to pause actually right here real quick, because right now I am 2 under par with holes 8, 9, 10, 11, and B to play. So 5 holes to play. I'm 2 under par. I'm actually, at this point, I was checking live scoring because I knew I was getting kind of near the end of the round, and I knew that the only real birdie opportunities I still had left were this hole and maybe hole B, because 9, 10, and 11 for me are just par holes. I just don't have the distance to really attack them. So I was kind of trying to see where I was sitting at in the field, and at 2 under par, I was actually only, I think, 2 strokes off the lead. So I was feeling pretty good, actually, especially with going to South the next round, where I think anything can kind of happen at that course. It's a lot harder of a course, requires a little bit more accuracy. But it's a course I feel very comfortable playing. It's kind of my second home course. Like Muni and South are probably 2 courses I play an equal amount. And so I kind of call them both my home courses. I would maybe even call South more my home course. That's where I first started playing at. So either way, I was feeling pretty good and just knew that, hey, if I can just par out or maybe grab one more birdie, you know, get the 3 under par, or just stay at 2 under par, I'll finally freaking shoot under par at Muni, which I do all the time in casual rounds. Like, I usually shoot anywhere between 2 to 6 under par when I play practice rounds or casual rounds here. And I think my best score at this course is around 8 under par. You know, there are a lot of holes I'm very capable of birdieing on this course. It's just about lining them up at the same time and just making sure that I don't make any big errors along the way so that those birdies really count. And I was on the verge of doing that by being 2 under at this point in the round. If I could just get through these next holes clean, I'd be good to go, and I'd finally break that curse. Because it's been very frustrating. That's like another kind of like mini goal for me. It's like, just shoot under par at Muni in a tournament, finally. You know, it's one of the easier courses in the area that we play tournaments on. It's pretty wide open. There's not a lot of holes that require like gap shots or hitting really accurate lines. There's a few, but not many. The OB is pretty easy. You know, there's not like a lot of tight OB here. Most top level pro players are shooting double digits regularly, and you see some guys shooting like 12 to 14 under par on this course on a pretty regular basis on a 20-hole layout. So it's just like, man, if I can just shoot anything under par, that would be great. I think the best I've ever shot on this course is maybe like even during a tournament. Again, despite the fact that I can shoot 2 under to 6 under par on any given day if I go out and play casually. So anyway, I was finally in a spot where maybe I was going to do that as we get to hole number 8. Nearly hit that pine tree, and that would have been devastating. But put myself in an okay spot. I was about 340 from the basket, so I didn't get as much distance as I wanted. I needed about another 40 feet of distance off the tee to feel comfortable. Just didn't quite get the nose down that disc as much as I wanted to and get as much turn as I wanted. But I threw a pretty good forehand approach shot here. And so this actually put me in circle 2 for a birdie putt. I got about maybe 300 feet, 285 or so out of that upshot, and I just threw my putt a little too high, which from that far away, I'm not too upset about. It happens. But this is a par tap-in, basically. I'm sorry, I don't know why that clip went sideways in editing. Unfortunately, that is what happened. But if we take a look at this putt in slow-mo real quick. You can see it looked pretty center, but I was just slightly right of center. And so despite catching a lot of chains on the right-hand side on the pro side where, I mean, you can see it's got a lot of chains on that disc. Unfortunately, it did just kick out the right-hand side despite catching a pretty good amount of chains just right of center, which, you know, right of center is considered the quote-unquote pro side, and usually if you hit that side, especially on a little bit of hyzer angle, it'll usually just kind of drop down and still be a made putt. Unfortunately for me on that day, it was not, and so I wound up bogeying this hole, which put me to 1 under par. And that was really devastating to me because hole 8's a hole I feel like I can birdie, but even if I don't birdie it, it's a really easy par. You know, even if I don't get enough distance on the second shot to give myself a birdie putt, I usually have like 100 feet or so to approach the basket and give myself what should be, you know, kind of a, you know, 15, 20 footer at worst for par, which is basically what I gave myself there when I ran the putt and hit the top of the basket and kind of skipped over it. I had a really routine distance putt, and to have it chain out like that, that one hurt me. That one made me feel bad. So now I'm 1 under par, and I'm thinking, okay, if I can just par out, at least I'll still shoot under par for the round, and that'll be enough for me. And so now we get over to hole 9. Again, this is one of those holes that's too far for me. You need like over 400 feet of power to get to this basket, I feel like, on the hyzer line that we're throwing wide over here. And this is that Esplin or Emperor from earlier. And again, I smacked it pretty hard, and you can see that it's trying to fight back here at the end. But yeah, this disc was just not flying as overstable as I'm used to. I would have thought that it would not have turned that much at all. And so unfortunately, I go out of bounds, and then I kind of fluffed this approach shot. I think I was just still in my head about the drive and didn't focus up and make sure I got the approach shot down correctly. And then I just throw it low left. And so I wound up taking a double bogey on that hole, which is just back-to-back blows to what was a round that was going pretty well. Again, if we take a look at this drive again, I'll try to see what angle I release this on. I'm actually kind of curious because this is kind of me really looking back for the first time. So I'm here. It looks like it comes out of my hand pretty flat. I definitely wouldn't say that I yanked it over like on a lot of Anheuser or anything like that. It looks pretty flat, maybe even slight hyzer, but you can see it flips up and just turns right really hard, which is just not normally what my Emperors do. Normally my Emperors are kind of like Destroyers, you know, they just fly straight and fade. That one turned on me pretty hard, and even though it had the in-flight stability to kind of try to start fighting back, it was just way too turned over into the parking lot to get back in time. And so that was a pretty devastating hole to say the least. So now we move to hole 10, 1 over par. At this point, I kind of realized that I'm probably going to be over par for the round. It is what it is. So I don't really think too much about it here on hole 10. Just try to throw myself a shot that makes it through the gap and just gets me up the fairway. Not really a putting distance I feel like I can actually attack the basket with, so that was more of just a layup, tap in for par. So on this hole, the one way that I have been able to get a birdie putt in the past is, technically speaking, my forehand distance is further than my backhand distance if I get a perfect forehand. So right now, a perfect backhand for me is like 350, 360 in neutral conditions on flat ground with like no downhill or tailwind assistance. Like obviously if I'm throwing a little bit downhill, get a little bit of tailwind assistance, maybe I can push like 380 or something like that. But backhand wise, I'm 340-ish max, and on average I'm throwing 300 to 325. With the forehand, if I get the height right and I flex it really hard, I can usually throw them like 375, 380. So my potential, I feel like, it's a little bit higher with the forehand. And because I'm 1 over par, I'm like, man, I'm really going to just try to attack this hole with the flex forehand. It's also because when you look at this hole, there's this big tree in the center, which collects a lot of disc. You have to really throw like a wider hyzer shot kind of towards these two skinny pines, then have it crash in left. And because when you take that line, you're requiring more distance to reach the basket because you're playing a wider shot instead of a more direct line straight to the basket. The basket's right here. So the forehand allows you to throw a shot kind of in this area, which is more of a straight line towards the basket, which means you have less ground to cover. And so you can have a better chance at getting close to the basket is kind of what I'm getting at, because you can take a more direct line at it. So that's the other thing the forehand kind of provides in this hole compared to having to throw the wide backhand over here. So I decided to try to go for the flex forehand I was talking about. And fortunately, I threw it right into the ground. Too much Anheuser, not enough height. And now even par at this point is going to be tough to get. But was pretty proud of that approach shot. Nestled it right into the green. Tap in par. So at least no harm done. Now the final hole, hole B. This is a tough one. And out of bounds. This is not to this one really quick. This is a Fission Wave, which is a pretty unstable disc, and we had a slight headwind. So I'm like, hey, if I just put this high and wide with the headwind, it should just do a slow turn and the entire way to the basket. And again, it was me thinking maybe I can birdie this hole, which I have birdied this hole with this exact same shot before on several occasions, where I just throw like an understable disc wide left and just have it turn the entire way to the basket, which is right here. You can also throw forehand at the left-hand side and get there as well, but again, my forehand felt pretty shaky, especially after the tee shot I just threw on hole 11 where I shanked it right into the ground. I really wasn't feeling the forehand. You can go wide hyzer underneath this stuff here. The issue is it's low ceiling, and you have the OB road right to worry about if you don't get the right angle on your disc. So normally you have to hammer something pretty straight just to the right of this tree, and then have it get some good skips to get up to the basket. So I felt my best chance to attack this basket for birdie was to play the big turnover. I could have just played a chip forehand and played this for par, which is probably what I should have done and what I normally would do in a tournament, just because I can execute that very regularly, whereas the birdie is more of like a 50-50 for me. But anyway, despite it being a headwind and me throwing a pretty understable disc, and even though this disc was turning a good bit at first, I don't know if I got the discus a slight bit nose up or if the wind shifted or what happened, but it winds up going out of bounds. And so this is my bogey save putt, which was, not even close. And so, or par save putt, I should say, and so that wound up being a bogey. So here is what the scorecard looked like at the end of the day. I started on hole 12 right here. Parred out the first couple of holes, which is kind of what I expected. There was definitely a chance to birdie hole 13, but I just threw a bad forehand off the tee. Got the par, no problem. Getting the birdie on 14 was really nice. It's not one I get. It's kind of a tight shot, and it's hard to get the disc just right. But I did, and I was able to capitalize, which is nice. Unfortunately, I went OB off the tee on 17, so that kind of canceled out my first birdie, put me back to even. But then I was able to, grab the birdie on 2. I really wanted to get the one on hole 1 as well, as I feel like it's a super easy hole. But I just threw a bad tee shot. But bounced back, got the birdie on hole 2. A is always a par for me, pretty much. So that's kind of par for the course. 3 and 4 are holes I can sometimes birdie, but not always. And so getting pars on those holes, totally fine. 5, I felt like I just threw the wrong disc, not realizing that the Emperor I threw was more beat in than I expected, and it just turned more than I thought. And so that kind of killed me. Hole 6, I threw a beautiful tee shot. Just didn't throw the best approach shot and missed a putt, and so I wound up taking a par instead of a birdie there. So that kind of hurt. I feel like I left some on the table. Even though I went 2 down through this 1 through 7 stretch, which is just kind of the stretch on Muni where you should be doing the most of your scoring, I would say like holes 1 through 8, with the exception of hole A, is like birdie or die golf almost, especially for top-level players. And while I'm not trying to claim I'm a top-level player, I feel like even as like a higher-level amateur player or even mediocre amateur-level player, you should be birdieing, I feel like, at least 4 of the holes between 1 through 8. 1 and 2 are super easy. 3's pretty easy. 4's pretty easy. 5's pretty easy. 6, when it's in the long pin position, is really easy. Once the short pin's a little tougher. And then 7, is also, a pretty easy birdie as well. And 8, as long as you have decent distance, with it being a shorter par 4, it's also one you really want to be getting, or at least parring. So the fact that I only got 2, that hurt. I feel like I needed to at least get 2 more in this kind of stretch between 3 and 6. So that kind of hurt me. But regardless, I'm 2 under par going into the last 5 holes, and then I go bogey, double, and then another bogey. And so I wound up shooting 2 over par, which is rated 887. which was disappointing because I feel like for some weird reason, Langan Municipal Park's ratings are just like not as good as they usually are for some reason. Because earlier this year, even par at Muni was like 940 rated, which might be a little bit overinflated, I guess is the right word. I don't think that even par at the course should be 900 rated, like or 940 rated, but I do think like even par should definitely be at least 900 rated and potentially a little higher, like maybe 915, 925, something like that. I think it's kind of a fair place to put even par on this course. But I shoot 2 over par. I was 887. And then literally the next round, when people played this exact same layout in the exact same conditions, for whatever reason, 2 over par was rated 900. So I don't know how in the world there was a 13-point difference on this course in the same exact conditions that would cause me to get an 887, but then someone who shot the exact same score an hour later got a 900 rating. I don't know, man. Ratings, for I know ratings don't mean everything, but like I said, 900 rating is definitely just a goal I wanted to try to break at some point. And I mean, yes, if I would have shot in 2 strokes better, I would have shot over 900. And it really just comes down to that double bogey on hole 9 and the bogey on 8 that killed me. But still a little bit disappointed. I won't lie. And ratings confuse me because I don't get how there can be a 13-point difference an hour later. It's kind of wild. So to give you an update, we are now going into round number 2 at USA, University of South Alabama. It's a 20-hole layout. We're actually at 2 temp holes added to this course, so turning the 18-hole layout into a 20-hole layout. And I was in MA2. I think there were 18 players. I was in 12th place after the first round, so pretty grim. I was 6 strokes off the lead. I think 4 under par was leading MA2 going into the second round. And at this point, I was thinking, man, a win is probably not in the cards 6 strokes back unless they royally screw up. But I knew that a top 5 finish, despite being in 12th, was still very possible because I think the players that were like kind of third through 5th were only like 2 under par or 1 under par, and I was 2 over par. And I knew that it was on this course with the difficulty it has on some of the holes, with some of the OB on some of these tip holes and just some of the normal holes, how they play, fighting back 3 or 4 strokes is pretty reasonable, actually. So I knew that there was still a chance to hit my goal of getting a top 5 finish. I knew there was still a chance to shoot like a really good round here. And while I wouldn't, have, an over 900 rated round because the first round, that was already gone, I could still shoot over 900 this round and still shoot over 900 for the tournament if I did really well. So that was the goal here. And we started on a temporary hole B, which this is a really tricky shot. It's basically a double island because, all this rocky stuff to the left is OB and then like the sidewalk to the right is OB. And there's also like a kind of pull-in path to get into the parking lot that's OB. So it's basically a double island. But I threw a nice little low skipping forehand, which put me on the second island. And then I was able to throw just a nice little backhand chip shot up to the basket to give myself a tap-in par. And I believe this is actually the first time I have parred this hole in competition. I think I've bogeyed it every other time I've played it. So now we go to hole 13, a par 4, and a tricky one now that these trees have grown up in the middle of the fairway.
I'll get out of it.
And just shanked a forehand. Put me way in this rough. But I threw a pretty darn good recovery shot. Just a big standstill. Put me right in the perfect position. You kind of want to be here off the tee where I'm at to try to be fighting for birdie. So I took birdie off the board. But par is still in the cards, and I threw one of my best approach shots to the green I've thrown in a while on this hole. I actually threw it past the basket, which I don't think I've ever really done before. And I didn't really even know how to handle it. I've never really putt downhill like this before, so I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I just kind of like pushed my back leg further back to give myself what I thought was a comparable putting stance, and that felt so good to save par on that hole after my tee shot. Yeah, there was like some animal making weird moaning noises below us, and they're like, what the heck's going on? I don't know. Anyway, after shanking the forehand wide left last time, I just threw this one way too safe. Between the water And the fact that I had just shanked my last forehand off the tee, I just didn't have the confidence. And you can see my leg kind of on my left ankle is shredded from being in the woods on the last hole. So I kind of took that hole off, honestly, and just grabbed the par and got the heck out of there. Now we're on hole 15, a par 4. Not long by any means, very short par 4. But I decided just to go with something more overstable. That's the Conqueror from Infinite Disc, which is kind of like the PD2, basically. Just because I know that if I put that on Anheuser, it's still coming back no matter what because it's just so overstable. Then I threw my Pyro here and put it right on the green. And then gave myself probably like 15 to 20 foot putt for birdie. Dead center. That is, I think, the first time I've birdied that hole in a tournament. And I've played a lot of tournaments at USA. I've birdied it casually a couple times, but never in a tournament. So that felt really good. So now I'm 1 under par through like the first 5 holes or something like that. This is the classic hanging basket hole. Throw a really good tee shot. Was pretty happy with that. But then just a horrible approach shot. Threw it right into the ground, leaving myself a really long putt at an elevated basket for par. And there was also like a ceiling I was having to contend with in front of me. And there was just no way to really fit a disc high enough and not clip the branches. And even that par putt was pretty scary. Or that bogey save putt, rather. It was pretty scary, but I did it. So now I'm back to even par. Birdied 15, bogeyed 16. Parred the rest of the holes we played so far. This hole, I just yanked my drive right because I'm so used to this hole sometimes having an OB line on the left-hand side. You can actually see some of the white flags there. It wasn't playing as OB during this tournament, but I'm just so used to the OB being there that it kind of got in my head, and I just yanked my shot right. So on a par on that hole. Hole 18. Just did not throw this disc flat enough. I needed to throw a little bit of Anheuser with it. It's a pretty overstable disc. It's the Spice from Clash Disc. And so I left myself a really long putt for birdie here.
Oh, that's so bad.
And I just yanked it.
Not putting.
Which just happens sometimes. I'll just yank my putts right sometimes when I'm trying to like put a little bit more oomph on them to cover more ground. And yeah, that hurt. But at least I got the tester par save putt there, and so we stayed even par. Which even par on this course is actually still decent for AMs, honestly. This is hole 1. It's like 360 uphill. And so it's not one of the holes I can really reach, honestly. And left myself probably somewhere between 60 and 80 feet away from the basket here.
Get some height, you dumb.
I said, give it some height, you dumb, dummy, dumb. I don't even know what that means, but that's what I said to myself after that shot. Because, I mean, here's the thing. I knew that that wasn't realistic to make it, but I at least wanted to give it a chance. And the fact that I couldn't get the height right, that hurt. So, yeah, going back to this one hurts because this is looking like the most perfect backhand turnover you could ever hope for. And then I clipped the last tree on the way to the basket. That thing was about to be...
So stupid, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
That thing was about to be in circle 1 for a birdie putt. And now, all of a sudden, I'm stuck with a low ceiling in front of me. And so I just kind of lay down and just jump putt it underneath the low ceiling to give myself a look at par. And I hit the putt, so keeping myself at even par. As we move into hole number 3. Trying to throw the flex shot here with something, you know, overstable. And I didn't throw the shot the way I wanted to. But then add insult to injury, I also caught another pine tree. So just jump putted that up there. Another par. Now we're on hole 4. I can sometimes birdie this hole, but in reality, I'm just trying to make sure I get par because it's so easy to kick either left or right and get yourself in a lot of danger and take bogey. And I almost put myself in one of those spots anyway, but luckily I had a little window I could punch a forehand through. And I was able to throw it just well. So another par. Staying at even as we go into hole 5, which is, to me, kind of a, you know, rolling of the dice type hole. Really low ceiling, lots of roots you can catch. But I basically throw the perfect shot inside, keep it high enough to avoid any roots, and then give myself a pretty short birdie putt. And so now I'm 1 under par. Get over to hole 6. Didn't quite put as much anhyzer on this disc as I wanted to play the flex shot I was trying to go for. But I still made it through the trees and made it inbounds, just past the water. Giving myself kind of a longer uphill putt, maybe 30-ish feet on this uphill putt.
Get in there.
But get the job done. So back-to-back birdies. And so I'm going to pause real quick because after I made those 2 birdies, I think at this point we had this hole I'm on right now and then 10, 11, 12, like 7 more holes to play, something like that. And so I knew I was kind of past the halfway point of the second round. And I was kind of wondering, like, where am I sitting at? And I checked my phone before I threw this tee shot, and I kid you not, I was tied for the lead. And I couldn't believe it because I was 6 strokes back of the lead, if you'll remember, whenever this second round started. But now, the 2 people who were 4 under par after round 1 had some slip-ups on the course on some of the holes that I was parring, and I even birdied like hole 15 where some guys were taking bogeys on that hole. So it actually got to a point where I was tied for first at 1 under par, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm in this. Like all of a sudden I'm in this. You know, this is kind of crazy. I just went back-to-back birdies from even par, so now I'm 2 under par. So I'm tied at 2 under par for the lead with 2 other people. And so I'm like, man, if I just hit the gas here, there's a chance that I could still win this thing. You know, if I can get a couple more birdies, play some of the harder holes, you know, safe, then I'll be good to go. The difference is that they were 2 or 3 holes behind me. So even though we were tied, they were about to play the easier holes that I just birdied. And so they were probably going to birdie them too. So that would probably still put them a couple of strokes back ahead of me. But I was still in the mix at least. And so I was just trying to take a breath and focus up. This is like another tip hole, kind of a shorter one, slight tunnel shot, 240 feet. And I throw just a perfect laser beam right at the basket. I was a little bit concerned I threw it too hard and was going to go into the road, but I wound up catching the grass here and basically parking the basket. And so that birdie put me at 3 under par for the round, and it meant that I actually had a 1-stroke lead for like a brief moment in time. And I was solo first place for a brief moment. Again, those guys that I was ahead of, all of a sudden were birdieing the holes that I just birdied, so they pulled ahead of me. But anyway, now we're on hole 7. I felt tailwind whenever I threw some grass up in the air, and I could feel the wind blowing at my back. So I'm like, okay, we got a tailwind. I'm going to throw something a little bit understable and just try to get myself as far up the fairway as I can. Can't really reach this basket. This is, 450 feet or something like that, and it's uphill, so it plays closer to 500 feet, honestly. So to give yourself a birdie putt in this hole is damn near impossible as a long par 3. So I'm just trying to get as much as I can, though, to give myself an easy approach shot. That way I can get a routine par. That's all I'm looking to do on this hole. So I throw a more understable disc, and despite it being a tailwind, this thing just keeps turning right the entire way. So the wind must have shifted at some point, and so I got screwed. Now, this is my 3rd shot, by the way. We didn't catch my 2nd shot on film because I was way down the hill almost to this road. Because my tee shot, when it hit the trees, it kicked right and slid down the hill. So I basically had to just throw it backwards just to kind of get back to the fairway. And even then, as you can see, I'm not really in a good spot at all. I still got a lot of trees that are between me and the basket, and just trying to find the right throw. I was trying to think of what the best option was, backhand turnover, patent pending, forehand. I was trying to run through the options here. Ultimately decided to go for the forehand play. And just didn't get enough distance on that forehand. I gave it the best look I could, though, honestly. And so this is for bogey on the par 3. And just threw it too high. Hit the number plate. And so I'm going to wind up taking a double bogey on this hole. And so instead of being 3 under par, I am now 1 under par. And now I'm back again. I think the leaders are back to being like 4 under par. So now I'm like, 3 strokes behind them again. And so I was kind of out of the race for the win at that point. But I knew I could still have a good finish. I'm like, hey, if I was tied for the lead, even if things didn't go well and I'm not winning, I can still press for like a podium finish maybe even. And so this shot, I was feeling tailwind yet again. And this time I just threw the disc a little bit better. Perfect shot. Overall, that dangerous OB. Didn't hit the pole. Got well up here in the corner. And so I threw this shot about 315, 320. Because that pole is like 280 from the tee. And I threw it, you know, like 25, 35 feet past it. Then I was feeling tailwind again, so I tried to throw one of my straighter mids thinking that the tailwind would make it, you know, stable out. And it kind of did, but I just threw it way too wide. And so I threw it well past the basket. This is my birdie putt, and I'm just, you know, 50, 60 feet away. Just didn't happen. So I went par on that hole. A little bit disappointing because on that hole, when you throw that kind of tee shot and you put yourself in that position, you know, I was literally right here on the corner. I think I ranged this at 240, 250 to the basket. I mean, I got a wide open hyzer shot at it. And if I just would have put this disc on a more hyzer angle, or if I would have thrown something slightly more overstable, instead of kind of almost throwing it on slide Annie, I would have been able to use that tailwind to put myself in the circle and have a birdie putt. So a little disappointed on that one. Next hole, I decide I'm going to go for the big risk. This is like 360 feet to the basket or so. All these trees have grown up so much that really going outside lets your best bet. Usually forehand or turnover, but I went roller. And this roller was absolutely perfect. I could not have drawn that roller up better. Look at this thing. Just parked. I couldn't believe it. Let's watch this roller one last time, just because this is probably one of my best shots of the entire tournament. And probably the best roller I've ever thrown this hole. This is with the Thought Space Athletics Mantra. Kind of puddle top, ethos plastic. And yeah, just curled it right in front of the basket. And so this is definitely the first time I've birdied this hole in a tournament. And I very rarely even birdie it in casual rounds. Even my rollers usually leave me 60 feet away. So that put me back to 2 under par for the round. And so now I'm thinking maybe I can still make a little something happen. I'll get a couple more birdies.
Yes, sir. Get out.
And a scary tunnel shot off the tee here on hole 10, and I threw it perfectly. And so now I have a chance to birdie this hole, one of the harder holes on the course. I think I was 285 from the basket. And this just isn't flies over as stable as I thought it would. That was like a Moonshine Boatman, which is an 11 speed, kind of like a Wraith. But in the Moonshine Plastic, the Glow Plastic, it usually flies a little more overstable. But just flew too straight. So didn't get the fade towards the basket, leaving me a very long putt. And yeah, just didn't give it that good of a bid. But still, par on this hole is really good. So I was pretty happy with parring. But really, if I could have birdied that hole, it would have put me back in contention for the win, honestly. So now we get to the final 2 holes of the tournament for me. Yeah. Almost got this one right. I wanted to go right side of that tree, not left side. So I was a little bit off my line. And because I didn't get over this little mound, now I have this obstructed straddle putt. So I'm trying to figure it out here, as you can see. Almost did it. Almost did it, but that's going to be another par, as you can see here. And now last hole of the tournament, hole 12, just another kind of tunnel shot, similar to hole 10 as far as how wide the tunnel is. Just put a little bit too much hyzer on this. Needed to throw it more flat. So it winds up kind of hyzering out early, catching a tree, instead of staying in the lane to ride up to the basket. But now I'm still standing in that lane that you would want your desk to travel up. So it left me a pretty clean approach shot to get up and down for a par putt opportunity. And so for my last putt of the tournament for par, about 15-ish feet away, get the job done. And so this is how my second round went. I wound up shooting 2 under par, which put me at even overall for the tournament. This round was rated 960, which is the second highest rated round I've ever played in a tournament. I think my highest ever rating was 979 at a tournament I played like a year or 2 ago at West Mobile at Wemo County Park. But yeah, this, I started on hole B. Parring B in 13 was actually so huge because I feel like B is a hole that people can easily bogey or double bogey because the OB is so tight on this hole. So the fact that I was able to par the hole honestly probably gained me strokes on people, or at least kept me in the running. Then 13 is a very hard par 4 to birdie. And so the fact that I was able to par save it despite going in the woods early off the tee was crazy. So I had a really hot start. Then I birdied 15, which is a hole I don't birdie very often. So getting that to happen in a tournament was pretty huge. So going 1 under through 4 on a pretty tough stretch of holes is actually really impressive for me, and I was really happy about it. Of course, I kind of threw it away on a hole that I really need to be parring. People bogey it all the time, though. It can be a tougher hole. The hanging basket can get you. But I threw such a good tee shot and then just threw a really bad approach shot, left myself too long of a putt, and so I wound up bogeying that hole. But, no harm, no foul. It is what it is. I ultimately was able to, just keep my mind right, collect my pars. I can sometimes birdie holes 3 and 4, so I was hoping I'd get one of those two. Holes 1 and 2, I very rarely get. I can never get one. It's just a little too far, that 360 distance, and it's uphill. I just don't have the distance to really get to this hole and give myself a reasonable length putt. But hole 2, I can sometimes get that turnover. Just caught a tree on the way to the green. This one, just threw a bad tee shot. 4, parring, it's good. I don't really birdie that too often, so I was pretty happy with that. And then hit that nice little stretch right there. 3 birdies in a row, got that turkey. 5, 6, and A. That's what put me in contention to still maybe win the tournament. It kind of tied me up with the leaders. But then, y'all all saw it. I overturned that tee shot on hole 7. Wound up double bogey in the hole, and that pretty much took me out of winning the tournament. But still, this run put me in contention to still finish in the top 5. And I was able to bounce back, par 8. I really should have been birdieing this hole, though, after the tee shot I threw. I put myself in a great position to birdie, and so not getting the birdie kind of stung a little bit, but at least I got the par. That's a hole that you can also get into some trouble on if you hit that pole or if you come up short, go OB in, the parking lot. It can happen very easily. So the fact that I had a clean tee shot and got the par was still pretty good. Then the roller I threw on 9 was just nasty. I was really impressed with that and really proud of that one to get that birdie. And then look, hole 10 is a hole that people screw up a lot. It's a very tight tunnel tee shot. It's very easy to kick early left or right and take a single or double bogey on this hole after a bad tee shot. Or if you just get out of position on the fairway, you can get into, just a lot of trouble. But I kept it clean. Almost had a look at birdie and took a par, so that was pretty solid as well, and then just finished out with pars. So ultimately, 2 under par for the round, even for the tournament, tied for 4th out of 18 players. And then if you add MA1 and MA3 into the mix, I was, I think, 6th out of around 50 players in the amateur divisions that were playing these 2 layouts. Obviously, MA4 is playing short tees, so I don't really count them. So I beat everyone in the MA3 division, which, again, was kind of the goal. I feel like me playing MA2, I should be beating MA3. And so I did beat all the MA3 scores. There were 20 players in that division. And then I came 4th in my division. And then if I would have been in MA1, I think I would have been 6th or 7th place out of the 18-ish players they had in their division. So, yeah, around 50-ish players, 55-ish players, coming 6th or 7th, I guess you could say. And then 4th in my division of MA2. Pretty solid. And also got, again, my second highest rated round ever at 960. So really cool little comeback to go from 12th place out of the 18 players in MA2 to 4th place was pretty awesome. Well, folks, thanks for tuning in to this video. Hope you folks enjoyed it. Again, I know that the content's been a little bit lacking here lately, but I was glad I was able to get out here and film this tournament. Again, it was a roller coaster ride of a tournament where I started out strong. I was 2 under par with 5 holes left to play on the first round and was in contention for the win. Then I hit a really bad streak of bogey, double bogey, and another bogey in the last 5 holes to go to 2 over par. And so I was kind of mentally wrecked at that point. But then, I came out swinging at South there in the second round, played really clean golf through the first half of the course, or the first half of the course that I played, even with some difficult holes being thrown in the mix of that. I wound up, getting that turkey to get a 3 under par. was actually in a tie for the lead again all of a sudden after being in 12th place and being in contention to win was pretty crazy. And then while I didn't make it happen, I still played some pretty solid golf to finish out the tournament and jumped from 12th to 4th place and shot a 960 rated round and shot 924 overall for the tournament. And yeah, I was overall pretty happy with how things went. Obviously, you always want to win. Obviously, I wish I could have stayed under par at Municipal Par. So even if I didn't win, it would have been nice to still, shoot under par both rounds. But the fact that I shot under par at South, the harder of the two courses, got myself back to even, didn't let the, last 5 holes of round 1 ruin my tournament and ruin my mentality. I just kind of, I got upset during the lunch break a little bit, kind of got a little bit down in the dumps, but I was talking to Tracy during lunch, and it's just like, well, that's over now. Let's just try to focus up and see what we can do. I knew that I could play good golf at South, and I just needed to show up and, do what I know I'm capable of doing, and luckily I was able to put a good round together and fight myself back to a pretty solid position. So anyway, that's really about it. From this point on, I'll try to put out more regular content as I can, but again, work has been pretty busy lately, so it's made it a little bit tougher, but I'm going to try to get some more casual round videos out, some practice rounds out, and then I have maybe a couple of tournaments coming up here pretty soon. I think the next tournament I might play is May 4th, so maybe just a couple of weeks from when I put this video out, I might be playing another tournament. Not 100% sure yet. If I don't play that tournament in May, then I know I definitely have a couple tournaments coming up in June, about a month away from now, that I'll be playing in. And so maybe I'll be doing some practice round videos for those tournaments, and then putting out some tournament videos as I play those events. So just be on the lookout for more content. If you folks are enjoying what you have seen so far, please do like and subscribe. Of course, it helps out a ton. Leaving comments helps out a ton. You know how the algorithm stuff goes, folks. It's been cool to watch this channel grow past 1,000 subscribers, and hopefully we can continue to keep growing it. Also, on some other news real quick here at the end, I will be hosting Tournament Central for Idlewild for the Disc Golf Pro Tour coming up soon. I did a guest spot as a host for, I think, the final round of Texas States that you may have seen. I got to interview Annika Steen after she won that tournament, and I got to interview Anthony Barella, who's been on a tear this year, so it's pretty cool to get to interview those folks after their win. And I'll be back hosting the show for the entirety of Idlewild. So that's some kind of fun news coming up on the Disc Golf Pro Tour front as I continue to try to get a little bit more involved doing broadcasting work in disc golf. It's a little bit tough with the Disc Golf Pro Tour's budget and the fact that they already have a pretty regular crew that they work with, on a regular basis. So, yeah, that is kind of just some news on what's upcoming. I'm also back into working in the esports industry again, doing some commentary and desk analyst work for Counter-Strike 2, and I'll be doing that hopefully some more this year and into next year as well. So if you're interested in esports stuff, which there has been some crossover I've seen, you could just kind of follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and kind of be kept up to date on all my esports ventures as well. So without further ado, though, I'm going to go ahead and sign off this video. Again, appreciate you all tuning in. Again, like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz, and I will see you here very soon for the next one.